you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. You are listening to the Altered History series, Episode 9, The Fall of Man. And as always on MINDSHOCK, and in particular the Altered History series, we delve into topics that the mainstream doesn't want to cover. The coincidence theorists and those hopelessly indoctrinated into the cult of scientism. They run for the hills anytime someone wants to discuss the possibility that the mainstream narrative, orchestrated by the corrupt profiteers and rulers throughout history to indoctrinate the public with, anytime that's called into question, coincidence theorists and scientism worshippers run for the hills. But we don't run for the hills here in MINDSHOCK. We examine all topics, all conspiracies, all theories in an objective and neutral fashion, scientifically, logically, objectively, neutrally, because that is the nature of MINDSHOCK. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. If they're still not working, you can just go to youtube.com/MINDSHOCK and see all of the latest podcasts and videos, as well as our older catalog, of which we have many, many topics and many more to cover as well. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings, theories of any kind, leave them in the comment section. If you like this particular episode, hit that like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for a case, topic, logical analysis, request, co-podcasters, and you could also be a guest on the podcast. All right, so let's get right into it. I've touched upon this subject somewhat in the past, and it's kind of steeped in mystery and intrigue. I mean, you have the Book of Adam and Eve from the apocryphic texts, the Apocrypha. You have the Book of Enoch. You have just even in the regular Bible, the fall of man, after which Adam and Eve are expelled from the Garden of Eden. Now, I'm going to touch upon one thing first. What if that was literal? You eat, you take a bite from the apple, so does that have multiple meanings? Multiple layers of meanings even. So one, of course, the knowledge of good and evil as opposed to basic instincts and just emotions and more of an animalistic nature as opposed to morality and judgment, so to speak. Now, of course, if ancient humans had a different mode of communication or even a mode of existence, of different mental states, that's difficult to think about. But if they did, then is that what altered it? And also, Santos Bonacci, as well as some other researchers, so to speak, occultists and otherwise, some people confuse occult with satanic. Occult refers to occulted knowledge, hidden knowledge. Hidden and or lost, depending on how one looks at it. It's obviously some of it is satanic and evil. Some of it can be good. Some of it can be neutral and is simply the facts of history. So occult has very broad meaning that sometimes gets boxed into Satanism and evil. That is, of course, not the case. So is it possible, as Santos Bonacci and others theorize, breatharians? MINDSHOCK actually did a podcast on breatharianism, basically just surviving on nothing but air, no food. Is there more of a factual, historical basis to breatharianism? Before the fall of man, were humans even based did humans even have to consume matter for energy? Because you think about it, what is the sole purpose of eating? You need an energy source, right? If your energy source is something other than physical food, now obviously you need water to survive, and again, let's not fall for false dichotomies. Let's say solid matter, humans didn't consume solid matter. Maybe they still consumed water. Maybe neither. Maybe no water or solid food. Maybe all energy was received from the sun, from the air, some kind of electromagnetic energy source that could be yielded from the air. And again, we have to tie this into with Tartaria. Something we haven't talked about on MINDSHOCK is, of course, a lot of these older buildings, they did not seem to have sewage systems built in. Some people theorize that's because humans of that time period had no need to go to the bathroom. Why is that? Is it possible because they were not consuming physical matter for food or energy? Now, of course, the cognitive dissonant masses, those hopelessly indoctrinated into scientism, they're immediately going to appeal to incredulity, a logical fallacy, of course. If you're being truly objective, neutral, and scientific, are you going to condemn without investigation? Condemnation without investigation is, of course, the height of ignorance. So if we are not condemning before investigating, if we are thinking about it, are we missing something? In the previous episode of Civilization Cycles, I postulate that there might be something to ancient mythologies, or in their version, that's just their own ancient histories. It's not mythological or legendary, it's just their historical fact that they recorded, and our so-called modern humans full of hubris and ignorance have called it mythology or legend, just sheer lack of mental capacity and possibly cognitive dissonance. So, is it possible that there were previous civilization cycles? We don't know which one is which, of course. Was the previous one Tartaria? The Empire of Tartaria? Possibly. Was the one before Atlantis? Possibly. Were there some Atlantean survivors living among the Tartarians? Was Atlantean technology even more advanced than Tartarian? And is the Tartarian technology simply a small fraction of what the Atlanteans were capable of? And we can keep going. We can keep going up this ladder if the Lemurians predated the Atlanteans or whatever civilization. Civilization X. Y, Z, it doesn't really matter for the purpose of this theory. Is there a certain state of human de-evolution where humans get less and less advanced, more physically and mentally weak, and even degenerate in health? I mean, the human being is the sickest species on the planet. Wild animals do not seem to be coming down with all these diseases. Why is that? Is that because of modern living? Malnutrition, a perversion of whatever the human body was designed for. Now, again, circling back to the beginning, the fall of man, what did it fall from? I keep bringing this up because I find it very curious. I'll probably be doing a dedicated podcast just on this aspect, but the golden age of man was attributed to being under the rule of the Titans. Now, maybe that's a broken telephone translation as well. Perhaps humans were dominant of this realm. Perhaps humans were, in a certain respect, divine or in some way masters of this realm. After the fall, biting from the apple, whatnot, in the next civilization cycle, whether that's ours or the one before or several ones before, perhaps, as the Mayans put it, if the world has began and ended 7 or 8 times, that first time, was that after the initial fall of man, and before that man ruled for time immemorial? Primordial times? I mean, who knows? We really don't know. I would use the term prehistoric, and if we actually break that down, prehistory, pre-his story, the new story, the false narrative, before the false narrative, prehistory. So, if humans were capable of much more, they didn't need to eat food. The architecture in some of these Tartarian buildings, if these were actually built by surviving Atlanteans, and they were kind of the lords of the house or whatnot, they didn't need to go to the bathroom, there were no sewage systems, but perhaps other Tartarians existed simultaneously with these Atlanteans, and they did. We don't know. As in most cases, any kind of genetic mutations, it's not a snap of a fingers and then the next morning there's a new mutation. It happens slowly over time and there's overlap. Is that what we saw here? And this fall of man, and this is actually the most mind-shocking aspect of this podcast, believe it or not, I didn't even get to it. Are we now controlled by archons, so to speak? So Carlos Castaneda, in his works, and which supposedly are derived from the ancient teachings and ancient knowledge of Native American shamanic teachings, so these there are other entities that supposedly control our realm through the mind. And the greatest trick they pulled is they gave humans their mind. And that's the difference between your consciousness and your mind, your ego mind, which controls you like puppets on strings. Is there more to it? Is this what archons are? Archons supposedly interdimensional energetic type parasites of sorts that can also influence. So in some of David Icke's, I know I'm going through a lot of conspiracies and occult knowledge here. David Icke, one of the most famous individuals pushing the reptilian conspiracy theory where these reptilian shapeshifters run the world. Perhaps that's not literal exactly. Again, I'm just postulating here. I mean, he's collected a lot of evidence. Some of it, I mean, he's been to South America. He's been to Africa. He's studied with African shamans. This information isn't stuff that he just made up. I mean, none of it might be true, but it's not like he just made it up like a fiction writer in front of his typewriter. I mean, David Icke has put in a lot of work to amass this research. Are his conclusions true? I don't know. But is it possible they're more metaphorical, where these are interdimensional entities controlling humans through aspects of ego and the ego mind and pure consciousness away from ego? That is what remains from the original divine man. And the fall of man was this process of infection or infestation of these archons, which was only allowed to happen through Eve's biting of the apple. And if that's not, and if that is actually literal, at that point, now humans need to eat physical matter to survive. And is it possible it's not really our divine consciousness that needs that energy, but the parasites? And they are causing us to need to eat. And if it's possible to overcome this parasitic infection, either through activation of the pineal gland, or if that's merely a way to see truth, is there a way to be rid of these archons? And is that what a lot of ancient spirituality is based on? Is that what's missing from modern knowledge, modern science? These shamanic spiritual aspects that have to do with the fall of man and these possible archons. If true, again, I'm not alleging any of this is true or untrue. This is MINDSHOCK, where we go down every rabbit hole and examine every theory logically, objectively, neutrally, scientifically. Not by just worshiping the altars of scientism and calling this all nonsense in strawman fallacies and appeal to incredulity logical fallacies and black and white logical fallacies and all these cognitive biases, normalcy biases. I mean, these are extreme concepts and extreme theories. But if they're true, does that put a lot of these pieces together? And these are all just my own theories based on reading all these other theories and how to connect the dots, because occult researchers, conspiracy theorists, aka critical thinkers, whatever you want to call them, this group of people does a lot of research. We do a lot of research. And no matter how much research you do, it seems like there's always pieces missing. Now, Santos Bonacci seems to do a pretty good job of connecting them with syncretism. He studied all these different ancient civilizations, ancient religions, ancient spiritual systems, and in a way has connected all of them in certain ways. He's found patterns and connections that seem to make a lot of sense. But even still, there's still more missing. And I find it strange that there's just so much missing. So in order to really make sense of everything, in a way you have to work backwards. It's kind of a reverse engineering of sorts. So the first step, of course, would be to look at the previous cycle, which seems to be Tartaria from what we can figure out. And then there's, of course, a lot of intricacies there. We have the Roche Empire, the Romanovs of Rome. Did ancient Rome even exist? There's a lot of issues, a whole lot of issues that have to be considered and explored. And that's what we are doing with this podcast series. So, the fall of man. Did it all go back to Adam and Eve? And how much of a literal story is that? And obviously there's plenty more left to explore just from that and where the Garden of Eden was. Was the Garden of Eden similar to Atlantis? Was it the whole Earth? And does it refer to more of a time period and realm than one tiny little location? Is that what's missing from that entire story, and that's why people can't figure it out? Similarly to Atlantis. Atlantis was one of the subjects I have studied extensively in the past, and it seems like there is a fundamental problem in the way it has been approached and researched, as if it's just one small location. Because if it's an entire worldwide empire, and if the Greeks and the Egyptians knew about it, so to speak, again, how much broken telephone are we playing with, too? A lot of these translations are alleged to have been from these older time periods and all these things. Has that been verified, though? Like, without succumbing to faith-based scientism, how can we verify all of that? Because even a lot that's written about the Greeks and the Romans, it's alleged to have come from a time period quite far in the past, but how are we able to verify that? That's what it comes down to. It's all about verification, because if we're being scientific, objective, neutral, and logical, we're not going to take it on faith just because some archaeologists said this, some scholars said that at one time period or another. We're just going to take their word for it on blind faith, because if it's all a house of cards, is that why we can't figure any of this out? Is that what's missing here? And a lot of researchers have kind of phrased our modern man as we're a species with amnesia, and there was some great trauma in the past. Whether it was a cataclysm, like we're talking Great Flood, was it a mud flood? Were there multiple ones? Was there one for each iteration of a worldwide civilization with possibly advanced technology, possibly each civilization cycle more advanced than the previous? And we are going through stages of de-evolution, and the fall of man is progressive. So we're getting farther and farther from the source divinity, so to speak, if man is divine. And is that what all of this means? Again, I'm just postulating. I'm just theorizing. I do not claim to know anything for sure. This is MINDSHOCK. The motto of the podcast is the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. But asking these questions and theorizing, we're never going to get to the truth unless all avenues are explored. Again, objectively and neutrally, without falling for logical fallacies. Plenty more to go over. I keep saying we're going to go to the architectural styles of these worldwide countries all over the world having similar architectural styles, and then what's hidden below the alleged basements and the historical photographic evidence for such excavation. There's a lot. There's a lot there we got to go over. I'll have Sid Irwin on for that as well, so we can dissect all of this information that's coming out now in recent years. All quite interesting, and can possibly explain quite a bit of the amnesia of modern man. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If they're not coming up anyway, and you've had your device set to allow those notifications, you could just go to youtube.com/MINDSHOCK and manually go through all the latest podcasts and videos, as well as a pretty extensive back catalog of a variety of topics. that we go over in typical MindShock fashion. If you like this particular podcast, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis requests, co-podcasters, and you could even be a guest on the podcast. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.